You need to be able to hear me, and I am a quiet talker, so I'll wear this. I won't belabor the agenda here, except to kind of orient everyone that we will spend the first majority of the time talking about research that is underway and any relevant, updates and things that we're really excited to share with you. And we're super excited about our guests who are both here in the room with us and joining us virtually. And then after a break, Valerie will really talk about, we've already shared a roadmap with you, but we are continuously learning. And so what have we learned since we last talked about the research roadmap with you? And really, really hope that there's some great discussion throughout, by the way. And then Shannon and I will talk through just all the non-research things, like, we just really want to understand, where are you all in your journey? What is important to you? What are the gaps that we can help to support you? And there's so many people in the room that can, really enrich that conversation and help us think through what that looks like. So we're going to do our best to stay on time. And my team knows that I'm going to try really hard to do that, but here we are just a few minutes behind. So I'm going to dig in if that's okay with everyone. All right. So the first thing I wanted to just touch on, some of you are very familiar with, some of you have already participated in and engaged in, some of you are champions of, and others of you are new to it or just aren't sure. And so I wanted to just spend a little bit of time talking about what data collection is and how far we've come in the year since about a year since we launched, and then answer any questions. And the next thing on the agenda is natural history. And so those two things work really well together. So Dr. Nicole Wolf and Dr. Genevieve Bernard are here to sort of help continue that conversation as well. So as far as what data collection is, really at its core, it's really an attempt to capture the journeys that each individual is on. Because as we know, 4-H leukodystrophy does not look the same for anyone in this room, anyone on Zoom, or any family we have yet to meet. And so by bringing together our community and understanding I always call it like, who's in the tent, right? Like, who is impacted by 4-H leukodystrophy and how can we capture what that looks like is critically important to understanding the disease, to engaging with industry. We had a really great conversation last night about, there are plenty of organizations out there who could potentially help us, but who don't know anything about what 4-H leukodystrophy is. And so data collection is one of the means that we get to use to say, this is who we are. This is what this disease, starts to look like. And natural history is a very in-depth extension and continuation of that as well. So our goal at the Yaya Foundation, as you know, we're the only organization in the world focused solely on 4-H. Our goal is to build the most robust data collection. Our goal is to be able to go to industry partners and to be able to go to clinicians and other researchers and say, we are in touch with 100, 200, 300, whatever the number is, we are in touch with this many families. This many families are engaged in our community and want to tell their story and be a part of the solution, a part of finding the solution. And so we get really excited. I mean, last I guess April, at our virtual care and disease management day, I think I shared this story with some of you when we were doing sort of like the warm-ups and the prep with some of the speakers, and we told people, who was in our data collection, not who, it's de-identified data, but the numbers. I mean, their eyes got real big. We've said a couple of times here, we're not messing around. We're here to really make the big progress, start these conversations, and really start to continue to build on the momentum that many of you actually were the founders of. So, I have a series of bullets here that your eyes will gloss over, but really this is an opportunity for the patient voice to be heard. That's kind of the nutshell. And, here's what we can talk about. The great thing about data collection is you get to go in, and when symptoms have changed, when you see something new, et cetera, this is sort of like at your discretion and at your experience that you get to contribute to the story. Dr. Nicole Wolf actually joined us on a family call last year, and so some of these, Nicole, will look familiar, but I love the AIDS clinicians and counseling individuals and families what to expect, right? So the more that we can share out with clinicians, particularly those who are seeing new patients or don't see many patients, the more we can sort of share what our community looks like and what their experiences are. And so you'll see that it's everything from, in this list, everything from, you know, clinical to partnership to research, to the time that we start to get really excited about moving closer and closer to clinical trials, like reducing some of the time or removing a barrier that, you know, we have a control group that are patients, because we can use data as a control group. So, and we've just identified in our own conversations, but also in further conversations, even last night, that really, you know, when we engage with potential industry partners, one of their very first questions is, do you have a registry? Do you have a data collection, otherwise known as a data collection? Do you have a natural history study? Do you know where your patients are? Do you have a global presence, or are you just in the United States? What are the age, you know, what do the age ranges look like? And all of those, some of, you know, they're trying to size up what the community looks like. And a data collection is a means to do that. So a little bit about how the Yaya Foundation went about this is we actually partnered with a nonprofit organization called RareX that was sort of started out of Empowered on the platform of the Broad Institute, which is a collaboration between Harvard and MIT. We were really excited at the idea that we were not going to set out to build our own data collection. We had heard from many patient organizations who had spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and maybe a decade later deciding that they had sort of done it wrong or had invested maybe in the wrong way. So the idea of partnering with an organization who sort of knew what they were doing and were thinking sort of pan disease was incredibly attractive to us. So we launched last summer, as I mentioned, and then additional surveys and functionality was rolled out at the very end of January. And we'll talk a little bit about what that latest release might mean in terms of action for those of you who've engaged. But the goal is really to, the other thing that was attractive about RareX was the sort of user interface. We didn't want to go with something that was going to be hours and hours of, you know, sitting down and uploading a bunch of files and things like that. So for those of you who've experienced it, it's sort of bite-sized in that you can start with sort of your general medical information, and based on how you answer those first surveys, you might be served up then like a deeper dive into a specific area. And so it's sort of like it's a very personalized journey. You're not asked to fill out, you know, seizure information if seizures are not a part of you or your child's journey. There will come a time when you can choose to upload your medical information if that is something that you are interested in sharing, though that is not a requirement right out of the gate. So it's not to say that that again, you need to have all the things, you need to have all the papers, and you need to commit to multiple hours. This is very like kind of at your pace and at what you are comfortable and willing to share. And for those of you, again, who've experienced it, there are multiple levels of what you want to share with whom. So you may choose to share your contact information with the Yaya Foundation, or you may not. You may choose to share it with pharma, or you may not. You may, you know, so there's very distinct levels of data sharing, because that we wanted that to be in the, you know, we wanted you all to own your own data. But that last bullet there is really kind of the meaty one, is, you know, we really wanted a secure environment. We wanted standardized data, again, not data that we just created that only we knew how to sort of, you know, optimize and leverage. And robust in that, as we'll talk about in a minute, this is sitting on a platform that other diseases sit on as well. So this is not just 4-H leukodystrophy. There is another leukodystrophy community leveraging the same platform, and many other neurotype disease communities as well. So you can think about, we know that our community is rare and ultra rare, but when you think about the power of, our patient data, sort of, I like to think of it as like swimming in a much larger data set. And when you think about a broader set of researchers being able to see some of that de-identified data, our data could come up in a way that is, presented to a researcher who knows nothing about 4-H, but could lead to some really interesting collaboration and learnings and things like that. And so I'll just a really quick comment, and this, maybe I should have said, this is just a quick snapshot of what it looks like when you land at our homepage for the data collection. Lindsay, I think Shannon was gonna drop the URL in the chat for those of you online. And then this was just a quick snap to show you the number of new surveys that were released late January. But again, if you aren't impacted by, oral health, maybe not the best example, but, you wouldn't see those surveys. So I just wanted to sort of demonstrate that, their pipeline of what is continuing to be rolled out is quite significant, but again, personalized to your experience. So just a real quick snapshot of where we are today. In terms of the most recent data, in about 11 months, we have 65 individuals who have engaged and participated from 14 countries. Even just seeing this map is incredibly exciting. Just understanding, and my friend Melanie from CureMLD was sort of the influence and the inspiration behind really visualizing what it means to say we're a global organization, right? I mean, we are hearing from, I've told some of you, Saudi Arabia is participating in the data collection, Argentina, and I heard from Australia last week, they were already participating, but I heard from a family in Iraq last week. I mean, it's really incredible to just, it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to really think about. I think you all are sharing the story of the Yaya Foundation. I think, we're getting out there. And so to see them, actively engaging in this way is incredible. We're really proud. I'm really proud of this map. I just, we get excited about different things, right? And so how did we get there? As I mentioned, Dr. Wolf joined us at a family call last year where we just talked broadly about what disease registries are and the role that they play. We've hosted a couple of info sessions since then. And I am always happy to talk one-on-one as well. So I'll just share just one snapshot as just an early insight. What's kind of fun, again, we see the de-identified data, but what's really exciting is to just see, like, for those who have participated so far, what are some of the early insights that the community is seeing at large? And this is just sort of one example of that. So as I mentioned, participation has caught the attention of our researcher and provider community. I think they're excited to see what the foundation is doing to bring families together. And there is a desire and an effort that we have committed to talking about how do we combine these patient-reported outcomes in the data collection and map those with provider-reported outcomes. How robust could a data set be when it's that combination? Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about, but we actually used that methodology of saying, look at the success of our data collection, look at the success so far of natural history efforts. And we submitted a pretty large grant in that vein of saying we would aim to combine that data, and we think that that's incredibly powerful. So already that data is being used in really meaningful ways. So just real quick, like broadly, so zoom up out of 4-H and just to talk about the platform for just a second. As I mentioned, there are other rare disease groups. And so far there are 27. They constantly have like classes of another dozen that are just rolling on fairly regularly. And at this point, I think it's very safely 750 individuals who've contributed across disease groups. So again, you know, data is swimming in a much larger pool, which is attracting a much larger, you know, researcher group. Oh, and I should mention, and maybe it's even here, the deep dive that's happening right now within RareX is on the brain. And so they have a pretty comprehensive sort of cross collaborative group that is focused right now on a lot of neuro, just deep diving into the neuro space so that they can roll out additional surveys really focused in our space. And then I just wanted to share, you know, it continues on. So their pipeline is full. It's real big. So we need you. This is my explicit ask. We set a goal to try to get to 100 participants by the end of this year, which I think is a really meaningful number. Again, when we go to talk to potential industry partners and we're looking for support or funding or, you know, just getting on their radar, really thinking about, you know, what is that number? We think 100 is achievable and we think it's meaningful. And we would just ask that, you know, we'd love to have you along with us. So if you've participated already, huge thank you. Absolutely. I appreciate the engagement and the time that you've taken and the journey, the sharing of the journey. If you haven't updated your password since February, this is a total technicality, but you will receive an email on Monday from RareX that's asking you to update your password. And it's because they added another layer of security for some two-factor authentication. So you will receive an email on Monday just to change your password. If you have questions about that or need help with that, I am very, very available to help with that. And then if you haven't enrolled, or if you just want to learn more, please feel free to, you'll see the URL there, and I know Shannon's dropped it in the chat. So please feel free to go ahead and visit the URL there to learn more or participate. I think that's my last slide. So let me see if anyone has questions or comments. Oh, Melanie. Yeah, so I'll repeat the question, which was specifically about RareX and, you know, who exactly has access to it is essentially, I think, Melanie, what you're asking. So that's a great question. So Valerie and I will have access to the de-identified data after we complete a 2.5-hour pretty in-depth training that really is focused on what does it mean to have access to data, particularly in a rare disease community. The outside of the Yaya Foundation, other researchers who have also completed that training can have access to the de-identified data. The conversation that was had, we need to understand that actually a little bit more, because my understanding is that that is a possibility at some point, but it is not today. So I actually have a follow-up to do on that. Nobody does right now. Yeah, Aaron. Yeah, so that's a great question. So Aaron was asking, is there any point in the process where the parents are asked about their data? And at this point, you know, many of the participants are caregivers entering data. And so there are questions about like what their pregnancies were like and things like that. There is not, my understanding is a lot of questions though about the parents uploading their own, genetic report, for example. But I know the genetic report upload is still like in the pipeline right now. So that's something I could do a deeper dive on as well. Yeah, it's a good question. Shannon, are there any questions in the chat? No. Okay. Okay. Okay, then I think Genevieve is online, and Nicole, we have you here in the room. So I think with that, we will transition to natural history. Does that sound good? Okay.